You've just tuned into the Works Plus TechTalk podcast, a podcast dedicated to the concrete polishing and grinding industry. Today, we are talking with a special guest who has a wealth of experience in the industry down under. We've talked previously at length with people who have been very much mechanically involved from a material or from a machinery perspective. And today, our special guest has a different approach, and his specialty is really in the business side of the business. So today I welcome Ben from Hunt the Night.
Thanks, Josh.
That all seems to make sense, doesn't it?
Well, when you transfer from one business to another business, the business name might change, but the motivation and what you enjoy doesn't.
Uh-huh.
And obviously, I'm a Van der Veen and have been involved in the family business at some level for a long time, and now I'm just involved slightly differently in my own.
Okay. So the business that you're in now is nothing to do with concrete. The name should suggest that.
Correct. So business is now Hunt the Night. We are a specialist gun shop is probably the best way to put it. We specialise in thermal and night vision technology and the application of that in hunting and pest control. And it's actually how that started isn't really too different to how I see the evolution of ProGrind. Now, you've given me a script, so I don't know if I'm jumping ahead. But I'm going to.
Well, I was going to ask you to this. That's where you are today.
That's where we are today, right? Okay. So when ProGrind evolved, we took something that was really small in an industry that was emerging. Okay. And they're always my favourite industries, emerging industries, because you get to reshape the way things are done. Okay. Now, obviously, grinding, coding had been around for a long time. I started with the business 30 years ago. I left it to go into business consulting and came back, obviously, in that transition when you guys went with Fast Farm and the sale of concepts and so on.
Yep.
Okay. A little bit about that's the quick 2-minute. Not even history, okay?
Uh-huh.
So back then, things were still very coded. And the evolution of mechanically polished concrete was just beginning, and we got to reshape how the industry worked and treated flooring. And for us in the night vision and thermal hunting side, it's the same thing. It's an evolving industry. Not a lot of people know how it works. I love the technical and the specialist and breaking that technical barrier down between knowing how our customers need to receive the message, which is exactly what we did in ProGrind as well. I remember, it's great that you can edit all this because you can make this however work you want, because I'm just going to keep talking. But anyway, I remember we used to do these architectural presentations and they went at lunchtime. You go to an architect's firm, the booking company puts sandwiches on and you talk about your product. Okay. Now, I really enjoy sales and communicating and talking to people, so I had to go last because the people that would go first would be like, "Hi, I'm Joe from Doors R Us. We've been making doors for 735,000 years. The door handle was really good. It turns 78 degrees and the bolt cat." I'm like, wow, fantastic, right? And it took me a little while to understand that you can put architects to sleep pretty quickly. So I used to start with a question and be like, "Hey, who here's used polished concrete?" And they'd all go, "Yeah, okay, what problems you had?" I never even actually introduced the company. We just started talking about the problems, and it was all coding based. It was, oh man, delamination, moisture, it looks crap, scratches in the floor, inconsistency of product. And I'm like, have we got a solution for you, right? That was just music to my ears, understanding everyone's problems. And out of that, we could shape our response. And it took a little bit of time to get it right, but man, did we get it right.
Well, you said that you had a business, you were involved in business consulting before this too.
Yes.
If you know how the process for that works, in order to be able to offer a full service, you've got to be able to listen to those problems, don't you?
Oh, 100%. I've done a lot of business educating, and my advice is to always be to everyone is don't talk, listen. Okay, because if you're talking, you aren't giving the people the opportunity to express their actual problem, and you're there as a problem solver.
Yep.
You know, at ProGrind, we just collect customers. Yeah, that was our job, was customer, not sales, we're customer acquisition. We listened to what it was. Now, there's also a little bit of a right time, right place, and you can't discount Dad or Harry's kicking in the door in a few places, and lucky I got to pick up on a couple of those threads and crumbs, and we look at like, you know, an emerging industry at the time in terms of home appliances, and JB Hi-Fi is a classic example.
Yeah.
Okay? Dan Murphy's, which then led into the Woolworths Group, and so on, and the shaping we got to do there, because one of the things I think we did well in ProGrind at the start was to deliver a message of consistency, where flooring in its nature, building in its nature, is very inconsistent. You can have two builders build it. JB Hi-Fi, you're going to get two totally different results. The paint color might even be off, you know. And back then, you know, 20 odd years ago, JB was going from 1 or 2 stores to rolling out to become 250 stores, you know, as well. So they're talking about a big rollout. Yeah, it was. And they had multiple contractors doing the floors at first, and so did Dan Murphy's, and that happened all at the same kind of time. And there was a little bit of, why are we getting a different result over here? Okay, and that opened up the door for us to start talking about what we did. And not just what we did, we got to shape how they did the rollout. So, for instance, you know, with a JB Hi-Fi, they would negotiate with a landlord to get 2 weeks early access. That was awesome, because we did the floor. No one could do the floor and then build a shop on top of it when you're dealing with coatings.
Yeah, that's great.
It was always a problem, right? The other beauty about then pushing into the polished concrete and then moving away from things like timber flooring or carpet was store relays. You know, they could change the layout of the floor, of the store, without actually having to do anything to the floor. You can go back to JB Hi-Fi's we did 15 years ago. The floor still looks good, and they haven't spent a dime on it. Like, there's a little bit of, we outsold ourselves.
Yes,
because you only get to do it once. But that inherently created tremendous, you know, value to all our customers. So we got to reshape the whole landscape of how we wanted to work, and making actually beneficial for our customers at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But so when you came into the into ProGrind, that was, what year was that?
Use it now. I think it was 2007, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2007 or 2000. I think it's around that era.
Yeah, right? I think it was late 2007. It was just after you guys had all moved on to working in the Husqvarna side of things. Dad had to retire. So I got 2 weeks of express training with Dad about ProGrind before he left. So it would have been at 2007, I think. Yeah,
so 2007, 2008. And at that time, you said there was a lot of coatings and that sort of stuff going on. ProGrind was still doing a lot of everything at that point as well. But you're pretty much famous in the group for stripping it down to a single focus. Yeah,
because it's easy to lose a lot of money when you try and do everything.
Yeah.
You know, and when I mean, look, there are a few challenges taking over ProGrind. One, it went down from 5 people involved to pretty much 1, right? Because you didn't really have access. You know, you'd gone to America, Tim gone to Sweden, Chris gone back to WA. Didn't really have a lot of access to the knowledge that was pre-existing, okay? But that created also opportunity, because I got to actually come in with it and look at it a fresh set of eyes. So the way and the reason we stripped it down is for 2 reasons. One, coatings was incredibly competitive. Everyone was doing it for free.
Yep.
Right? So sustainability, the margin wasn't there to do it. And you could see the writing on the wall that this has got a limited lifespan, considering what we're developing in the mechanically polished side of concrete.
Yeah.
Okay. It gave us a point of difference to the market, because we got to solve those problems that everyone was having. And when you're dealing with these national retailers, which is the ones I was really going for, because I'm a little bit lazy, you know, sell it once type thing, and let the project managers do the rest.
Laziest salesman in the world.
It's about that, delivering that consistent experience across the board for them.
Yeah.
Because when you've got different coatings, you don't know who did it. right? The end user, in terms of the customer, doesn't know who did it because the builders appointed it. So if there's a problem, who do they call? What did they use? How do we clean it? How do we maintain it? What's the maintenance program over its life cycle? All that type of stuff. We took all of that away. We gave them a solution that was, we can do your floors anywhere in the country. You're going to get the same result because we managed the outcome. And back then we were employing everyone. We owned all the machinery. It was a big operation. Guys were driving around. Our staff at the time were incredible. Like they just lived on the road, okay? Worked incredible hours, or within WorkSafe guidelines.
Of course.
So we delivered a consistent experience from across the board. They're one point of contact. If there was a problem, they called us, not the builder, okay? Which is really important post-transition into store opening because the builder's no longer part of the equation. And builders love to save up their defects and liabilities to the 12-month period where they get their last bank guarantee and deal with it all then. This way we could actually deal with any potential issues along the way. So we got to sell. We stripped it back because it was a better product. It was easy to sell against the competition, even though the product cost more to install. We found out pretty quickly the money wasn't the problem. Say that these days because I'm not involved in the business. No, but it wasn't. The money wasn't the motivator. It was well, okay, you look at it like this, right? For JB Hi-Fi, and probably for Dan's as well, when we're doing the flooring up front, if we can take a week off their opening, that's $2 million in turnover. That's about what the stores were doing back then in the first week. Okay.
Wow, thanks very much.
We also cut about 13% off their lighting requirements as well. So now you've got a business model that is now cheaper to run because of lighting, and we're opening it earlier. The cost of that floor is negligible. Like it's nothing. It pays for itself pretty quick. So
did you think to invest in that company before you started making all of these the contributions to the bottom line?
Well, so we got to reevaluate our message to the customers because we're now adding benefit to them. Okay, we're not trying to compete on price. We're not trying to promise things we can't do. We're actually giving them something that we can and repeat. And the issue with this, right, and the reason why we picked up a lot of this stuff goes back to consistency. There are a lot of people trying to do mechanically polished concrete, and it's great to see the industry's involved to where it has today. Back then, it was new, right? And because we developed the product, we knew it more intimately than anyone else, so we could give that consistency that these retailers wanted, because you want a consistent experience when you walk into a shop. You go to Bunnings, the best thing they ever did is, you go left to trade, you go right to garden. Everything is in relatively the same spot. Masters really should have just copied the Bunnings footprint if they wanted to succeed. Because you'd walk in, you wouldn't know anything what it is, right? And trade is, I know when I go to Bunnings, I don't want to be there looking for something. I want to know where it is.
Getting it out.
You can go to any shop. Okay? Same as Woolly, same as a JB. You want that consistent buying experience. I remember we did some conversions to some floors for Kmart. They had some regional floors. They had used effectively raw concrete with a densifier on top. And the feedback from their customers immediately was, why are we second-class citizens? They were not happy that you could go to another Kmart that had vinyl and it just felt so much better. Now, we retrofitted those stores to polished concrete over a period of time, night time. It was horrible work. They picked up something like 18 or 22% sales across the board because actually people enjoyed being in the store more. Because flooring has such a impact visually and spatially on your customer buying experience. So to be able to give them something that was so reflective, hard-wearing, we could deliver it early, you can build the store on top of it, and they were nervous. Everyone was nervous about building the store on top of polished concrete. For the first few times, and we'd factored in a little bit of provisional money to come back and do repairs. We banked every single cent because we never had to go back. It was, but that was a learning experience because sometimes we thought, well, we'll do the first 2 stages, we'll get it to grout, and then we'll come back and do the finishing. No, that's horrible. Competitors, best way to do it. Keep doing it. But by then, scissor lifts had been over it, had dropped oil, hydraulic. You're trying to repair things. It's much easier to deal with spot patching than it is wholesale fixing. So, And then you're dealing with fixture. Nah. So we just completely finished the floor. We gave them a guarantee. We said, don't cover it because you'll get white lines everywhere where it's hydrating. So they covered it and got white lines everywhere and it hydrated. So we've got to come back and fix that.
Oh, so you've known about that for 20 years?
Yeah.
We're still putting the message out there every week.
I can't believe people get nervous about it. We've been proving for the last 30 years this works, right?
Uh-huh.
And so it's just about to change that whole. It was really exciting to be part of, because it was new. We got to change the whole message to our customers. We got to build an industry that didn't really exist, before that.
Yeah, one of the things that I picked up on what you said before is that two things. That when you went to the architects or to the clients, you just heard what the problems were rather than trying to sell something from the outset. And the other thing was that once you had ironed this out, the cost wasn't an issue anymore. And I think that's one thing that's really important. If you go into a sales call or a negotiation, and if price is a real sticking point, it basically tells you that if we're talking about price, you don't understand the value, and if you don't understand the value, I haven't been able to articulate that to you.
Correct.
And I probably haven't listened to what the problems are.
Correct. 100%. And we've always taught our guys that, in the sales training we've done through the seminars, which when I was involved in them, we always told people that as well, right? That if price is the objection, and I really hate that terminology, but if it's a simple one because it's used in books. Yep. If price is the objection, then you haven't done your job in terms of delivering your value.
Yep.
Okay. And I used to feel really bad when I'd walk into stores that got coatings, and the first thing I'd have to do is call the brand and say, hey guys, I know your problems. If we've got a solution, but 100%, if price is the objection, then there's a problem. And we dealt with that price problem a whole different ways because we were lucky that we got, specified in a lot of our customers. Yeah. And sometimes there was an alternative specification as well. And our specification was a lot more comprehensive and would get builders coming back and saying, hey, can you do it for this price? Because this is what that person's doing. And I remember one particular store, we lost a couple of jobs to this mob. And New South Wales didn't last for very long. It was very early on in the stage of Dan Murphy's. And they'd come back with a price that was like $10 cheaper than we were doing it per square metre. But we had like 13 steps in our process and they had 6. So what I did was outlined it, put it in a spreadsheet and said per square metre, we cost this much per step and these people are costing this much per step. It was a much bigger number. I said, so you should go back to them with our per step number and get them to do it like that because I knew it cost money, right? They went back to them and then they came back to us and said, you guys have got the contract because you've got much better value in what you're doing. I was just trying to throw the other contractor under the bus, right? But that was just another way to actually explain our value. So we took that and we started using that as well, saying, hey, okay, well, let's look at it per step. Because then when we got nominated, so we're the only contractor in a lot of these contracts, and the builder would come back and say, hey, listen, we haven't allowed for that. We didn't use your price, a tender. We didn't know we had to. Can we negotiate price? It would go, well, which bit don't you want us to do? And they'd be like, what do you mean? I'd be like, well, the customer's paying for all of this. That's the price we negotiated with them to do this whole thing. If you want us to do it for cheaper, tell me which bit they're happy for us not to do. No. They want you to do the whole thing. I'm like, oh, okay. Do you want to go chat to my guys, see if they want to work for cheap? Because I don't think they want to work any cheaper either. And why would I want to take your project on when we're flat knackered to the wall and I could take that project and make the proper square metre rate and do your one cheaper? And then what's that builder going to do to me when he finds out, you start to turn that whole price argument against them and they just start, okay, no worries, sorry, I didn't mean it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a point, isn't it? I mean, now you're trying to make your problem mine because you guys didn't quote on what's already part of their design brief.
Correct, yeah. You guys aren't doing us a favour here. Yeah. And you're probably engaging us now too late in the process. So we're going to have to deal with the inefficiencies of site because we're not going to get the early access we want because you're figuring out now which is when you come into letting the flooring contract, which is after, your traditional times of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually going to be harder for us to do. So we always saw price never as a real, you got to cave into it or you got to drive it.
Yeah, right.
We drive the solution, we defend the product and the price and the cost to actually, to do it properly.
What about in competitive markets? Still the same? Or does it change?
We try and keep it the same. There are going to be some commercial realities now and then you have to deal with. But at the end of the day, if you drop your price once, you're going to have to do it again.
That's your new price.
Correct. That's your new price. So I would, if we've got a full book of work, which we typically always did, I'd rather lose the project than have to drop our price.
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky that, the national clients would just back us and they would say to the builder, bad luck, you've got to pay it because that is the price.
Mm.
Or they might turn around and say, look, we need to negotiate this budget over here, but we'll make up for over this budget over here type thing. So having that direct communication with our customers as well gave us a little bit of security and a little bit of, okay, cool. Okay,
mm-hmm.
we'll fix that one and we'll work it out over here type. So
because A and C wanted the outcome was B in the middle that was trying to negotiate, so you kind of lose out there.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So
That's
we
big.
you can do things like that when you're working with the end customer, but we'll always try to defend the price as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And we even do that in our hunting business. It's a competitive market.
I bet.
But we have the value, we have the knowledge to go with it, and the support that comes with it and things like that. There's a few things we do uniquely to everyone else that no one else hasn't invested in. It's like, well, that's what you get from us, as well. You don't just walk in and buy it off the shelf type thing.
Yeah, right. Okay, so still building value.
It's always value. Yeah. It's always going to be value. It's sometimes it's price, but a lot of the time it's got to be value. Yeah.
Often I get telephone calls from contractors.
Yep.
And they've been handed a specification or they've been invited to tender on a big job for a big client.
Yep.
And they call me up because they're ultra nervous.
Yep.
Your advice for contractors, 3 to 4 man operation, getting called up from a big organisation saying, hey, inviting you to tender. I always get a little bit dubious about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, we used to have that all the time as well because contractors actually call us and say, I've been asked to price this job. It's got a ProGrind specification. What do I allow for the chemicals? And I'd be like, that ain't going to work.
Yeah.
My advice would be this. Stick to what you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
Going from 2 to 3 people is difficult. If you're not used to handling large-scale projects in an environment that they need to be done in, you'll go broke pretty quick.
Why is that? Big volume, Ben.
Yeah.
All I see is the dollar sign.
Yeah, I know. You'll see the dollar sign and then you'll start to realise you haven't negotiated space. So you're working in very small areas. You're not protected on site in terms of having that exclusion zones because you haven't negotiated that into the contract. Your efficiencies are going to go out the window. People are going to disregard your space if you don't know what you're doing. And we put up barriers.
Mm-hmm.
We put up barriers on all our projects to lock people out. If you don't have a project manager who's not on the tools, it becomes difficult. You need a project manager to work with the companies, the builders' project managers, to make sure that your guys are protected, okay? Because your guys whinging to the site supervisor isn't going to change anything.
Mm-hmm.
But having someone who's got a little bit of contract authority behind them in terms of a mark, so to speak, they can get things done and interact at a level that you can't when you're on site. But we've seen it. We've seen guys who have just torn their hair out. Now they're working 18 hours a day. They've been pushed onto night shift. It's a recipe for disaster. To get to that level is not a quick switch.
Yep.
It took us a long time. Originally we were doing it quite inefficiently by hiring everyone and sending them all around the country. It's actually one of the biggest challenges, growth challenges we faced was how do we keep taking on these brands but being able to deliver on the promise of what we do. Hence we moved to a subcontracting model where we're engaged local contractors trained up by us in our products and processes and so on where we would still manage the project, but we would use them as our labour force.
Yep.
Okay, so it enabled us to continue the brand promise of delivery, consistency. There are a lot of companies out there like pseudo franchises that would win work and give it to someone, and that's you'd never hear from them again, and the outcome wasn't managed. And a lot of our customers were actually pretty nervous because we spoke to them about what we're doing and the changes we're making. They were quite nervous about us doing this until we said, but hang on, we hold the contract, okay? ProGrind holds the contract. ProGrind is the project manager. The products being used are all our ProGrinds. This is just a labour thing for us. They've still got to go through our training, meet our quality standards. We've done things like accelerated wear testing on our products so we could start measuring actual outcomes, because it's not a tile manufactured in a product, right? The quality assurance is done on site. We had, I can't remember what those meters were called, Josh, we could measure the scratch depths in certain stages, right? So we'd put all these KPIs together for the quality controls that the floor had to meet. So it didn't matter who did the work, we could still manage and measure the outcome to make sure we're getting it the same. Okay?
Yeah.
Because it's not like, you get a bad batch of vinyl tiles or something like that where the coating machine hasn't worked properly, you throw them in the bin and they never make it to the light of day.
Yeah.
We've got one chance to get this right. Sometimes three. But generally speaking, you got one chance to get this right. So we had to have all those checks and balances in place. So we were a little bit nervous as well. We took a little bit slowly rolling that out, but that was one of the biggest significant changes we made, I think, not just to ProGrind, but to how the industry operates, because I know there are other people now that have kind of tried to follow this model.
Yep.
But in terms of spreading the workload to the industry and empowering, a tooling company like Works to partner with their customers, to then partner with ProGrind, you create a lot of synergy at the same time, and removed a little bit of the, why would I want to use Works tooling when ProGrind does all the work? There was a little bit of a, well, ProGrind shares the work, as well. We're just a management company now. So that was a pretty cool thing that we changed.
Yeah, I think from an industry perspective, we saw a big shift in when ProGrind started doing the subcontractor model. We also started to see a whole lot more of, knowledge sharing in the industry everywhere.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of contractors go from being a small contracting company to doing those bigger projects, and that would stretch them to a much bigger company, but they'd now be looking at things from a very different perspective.
Yeah.
And previously you only had that type of market perspective based in a major city somewhere. And now you've got a lot of other contractors with this, I guess, bigger company mentality or perspective, not from an ego perspective, but being able to see things for, like you said before, contracts, worksite efficiencies and safety and all that sort of stuff, simply from the exposure of having to work within a company or within a group that has all of these pressures to deal with.
Yeah.
And just what, I guess, a knock-on effect from a professionalism perspective has in that local nucleus where they operate from.
The other thing we saw too is a lot of these guys are artisans. Like a lot of these guys do polish concrete because they love polished concrete.
Yeah.
They hate sales. They hate chasing money. They hate tendering. They hate all of that. They love doing polished concrete. We had a lot of these guys that were just like, well, okay, I'm making less per square meter, but I'm making more money. I've got consistency of work. I get the opportunity to do the best work that I can do. I'm working with the cutting edge tooling because ProGrind would always get the stuff first.
Yes.
We're always a generation ahead because we were the test bed for the group, as well. We protected them. We had their back the whole time. They had all these things that were not being fulfilled, and a lot of them just stopped trying to pursue their own work. And it was like, I just want to work for ProGrind because I get to do what I love doing. And that was a big change to a lot of these people's. They probably lasted in the industry longer because they didn't have to put up with all the crap. We took that on ourselves. We still had to chase money. We still had to deal with all of that. But they just got to do what they enjoy doing, and for a lot of people, they start the business for the wrong way. When I came back into ProGrind, I mean, my background was when I was 18, I worked for, we were still called Creative Change at the time. Went from grinding with stones on terrazzo to the first HTC machines. And then, I left and went into software and consulting and so on. Okay. So when I came back into ProGrind, I had a business approach, not a product approach.
Correct.
Okay. A lot of these people that are in the industry have a product approach. They're good at it. It's built out of what they enjoy doing and it's become a business. That doesn't mean they're good at business. It's not a criticism to people.
No.
There are books written on this. E-Myth is a fantastic book about it where a technician isn't the business person. They're good at what they do. We empowered these subcontractors to be good at what they did at probably a level they were the happiest ever doing because they didn't have the stress of everything else going around it. They got guaranteed payments. People were getting paid before we got paid. We never let our subcontractors not get paid. That was key to us. Our promise is you get paid on time, they got paid on time. Often we're chasing money, we're fighting for money, we're not getting variations, paid on time, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. We took all that stress away from our subcontractors and actually empowered them to do what they really enjoy doing. And I know a lot of them were very, very thankful for that.
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of like being a top tennis player, right? All you have to do is hit the ball. I might be simplifying things a bit there, but you're not your manager as well. You're not having to negotiate contracts. You're not having to do all things related to – that's a business too.
Yeah.
Right? That's a business too.
It is.
But the top of the game, you're not managing all that stuff yourself. You've got people doing that for you.
Correct.
And that's – to me, I always see businesses as being like sports teams as well. We've got the right people playing in the right roles here. And so on and so forth. So, but you see where you're coming from. And in an industry like it has become, it's got a lot of red tape. It's got a lot of paperwork on it. Lots of admin involved in it now, by comparison to 10, 15 years ago.
I have to apologise for that because ProGrind drove a lot of that red tape.
It's actually why I got you here, Ben, to make a public statement to the rest of the industry.
Sorry.
We all know why you left.
The red tape got too hard. No, but we had to drive red tape.
Yes.
Because we were dealing in an industry that was, and I've been out of it for a couple of years now, but it was very cowboy-y. Now, we were those cowboys.
Yep.
I remember hand grinding hundreds of linear meters with a sandpaper, no mask, and terrazzo, right? That stuff's not good for you. I remember with the Glen, the amount of times the firefighters had to come down because the volume of dust we put into the air, setting off the, and they weren't the good-looking ones necessarily either. But it was an industry that was incredibly unregulated. Now, there are two ways you can do this. You can deal with it and drive really good processes to help make sure that the people, because it's the people who are doing the work, are the ones that are affected by this. Not the people that are in offices selling it. Don't, okay? And I mean, I was involved in the Floor Covering Association for a long time. I was the president of the Floor Covering Association for a long time, which dealt with a lot of this in surface layers, as well as polished concrete. So there's two ways you can do it. You can either fix it, drive really good practice, have good measurements, around it to be able to demonstrate. So we did a lot of airborne testing, silica testing, all that other type of stuff. Or you can end up like the stone bench industry. You're pushed back and now you can't get Caesar stone.
Yeah.
Okay? Because there's no safety protocols around it, totally unregulated, incredibly bad for you. Or you can, we introduced a lot of red tape, but we had to because as an owner of a business, as a participant in an industry, and especially at the level ProGrind was, we still got a duty of care and responsibility to those that are doing the installation. And that also becomes a separation. That also become an arrow in our quill. We could go back to our customers and say, we've got all these safety controls in place. Okay, not just protecting our workers, but protecting your work site, because people walking around airborne silica dust isn't a great thing. Works has done an incredible job with their filters and vacuuming systems. I mean, I know you and Tim have spent, and probably Hayden, whoever was involved in it, but spent countless hours improving skirts on because we grew up doing this.
Yeah,
Dad didn't think about it.
I just want to just the skirts around the machines. We didn't grow up. Machine skirts. We didn't grow up.
No, we didn't grow up around skirts. No, but the thing I've really actually probably didn't appreciate as much until I was thinking about a lot of this the other day when you said, "Hey Ben, do you want to come and talk about this?" is actually the synergy between Works and ProGrind is incredible. Having a contractor in the field to be able to push back to a manufacturer to say we need to do this better, and the manufacturer pushing back to saying you need to do this better to the contractor, and that symbiont relationship is incredible. Like the advancement in technology, and it's no secret a new machine's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you didn't invent the best one, right? But even that's a story, because the dual drive technology has been the pinnacle of concrete grinding for decades.
Yeah.
So for you to come up with something different and new just shows the investment and the excitement and that pushing of trying to find that edge and something new and deliver on something better. It doesn't stop. Okay. Yeah. And so being able to do that with a contractor and a manufacturer hand in hand is incredibly powerful. I mean, the things we developed, the things we tried that didn't work. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's not the things that work; it's the things we tried that didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's slurry catching devices. So some of the separating stuff we tried to do. Right on auto scrubbers to remove, that curing compound in master stores. All this stuff that didn't work that we tried. Putting densify down with auto scrubbers. But
don't worry, we've done all the stupid stuff, so you don't have to.
Yeah, but that's what we did, And a lot of the people who were involved with this would never know what we haven't tried or what we have tried and didn't work because it never got it to market.
Yeah.
So the stuff that does come to the market isn't stuff that's been bought on Temu and gone, hey, here's a new diamond tool. I mean, the amount of times where we're looking at manufacturers that have come and spent time in our manufacturing facilities working on stuff. And Tim's drive for perfection and yours in terms of it's got to be better than what we've currently got. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. And just the out-of-the-box thinking. I remember when you first came out with those Z-shaped diamonds.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever it was.
Zigzags, yeah.
Zigzags. Wow. Like, would never have thought of making a diamond like that, but it did it. You guys think about things just like...
Yeah, we're sick. Absolutely sick.
You need a support group. But
then, okay, if you're gonna say that type of stuff, I want to talk about a contribution that you may have actually forgotten about, and I think it's kind of a funny one. There was a point, interesting one. There was a point in ProGrind when you came through the door, what you were selling was a product called Hyperfloor, which was a legacy product from King Concepts that then went into Husqvarna.
Yep.
And I remember having a group chat. I think we were all spread all over the place at the time still. And you were saying that basically in order to try and remove some of the challenges that both you and the customer were having, which was everyone promising the same thing but not delivering the same thing. So there was a consistency problem that the customers were experiencing. And you said, I've got to break away from this name and we need to develop a new product which has a new name so that we can bring that to our customers and they know when they see this name that that's what they're going to be receiving.
Yes.
Right? Now, we had a bit of a brainstorming session about a new name. Have you come up with anything yet? Because I remember at the time we all came to this, well, we'll have to come back to that because none of us are happy with MPC.
Well, it was MPC and it became the dominant product in the market. I want to talk a little bit about that, if that's okay. And I don't want to. This is not a shit canning of Husqvarna by any means, because this could happen in any situation where you're working with a brand that you don't control.
Oh, okay? Yeah.
And this is why we've always, again, spoken to our contractors that if you are going to go on your own, work on your own brand. okay, for a couple of reasons. One, we got tied to the bad jobs that we didn't do, okay? When we were still pushing Husqvarna or Hyperfloor, because that was the brand that we were originally operating under, we were doing the marketing more so than anyone else. So we're getting Hyperfloor specified and they're losing control of the project.
Yeah.
And there was a real point where Woolworths were ready to walk away from polished concrete altogether because they had Hyperfloor in there and they just couldn't get the consistency. And they came back to us and said, what are you doing different? We said MPC. No, we said, well, we control the outcome. We specialise in this. But there was two problems with that. One, when King Concept sold to Husqvarna, it's fair to say the development stopped. Okay?
Yeah.
It seemed to me to be more of a catalogue item than it was where, you know, the what King Concepts do and what Works do are the same. It is a development platform that turns into a tooling. Okay. So that kind of stopped. So we started going, well, it's not quite meeting the needs for the growth that we're doing. The product was more of a domestically focused product where we needed faster tooling. We needed fewer steps to get the same result. So we're talking about we needed development, right? So we had to break away because there were two things that were hamstringing us. One was, being tied to all the bad work and also specifying it and then losing the job because we're specifying us something we didn't control. Yeah. And secondly, we needed a platform where we could continue to develop and push the boundaries of polished concrete because it was emerging. Yeah. I mean, Husqvarna bought King Concepts when it was emerging. You know, it wasn't 20 years on or whatever it is close to. It's still emerging, but it's got acceptance. Where back then it was emerging with no acceptance. Yeah. So, so that's not a criticism to Husqvarna. It's a criticism to anyone. Don't tie yourself to someone else's brand because you got to live with that. You know, and then if you do make that big breakthrough of getting it specified in a big national company, and you're like, woohoo, you've just lost control. Yeah.
Well, I should have brought you into a debate that Mike and I had because he'd really like to see a specification. And I'm like, well, these are the reasons why I don't love it.
Well, we had fights with that with Works as well and ProGrind and the conflict of putting out a specification inside of Works for the exact same reasons. It's like, I understand the attraction and it makes it easy and I can understand that would make Mike's job a lot easier.
Yeah, because he's arguing for it.
Tooling and stuff like that. Yeah. But there's no quicker way to trash it than losing control of it. You know, I've always seen that the commercial and retail industry needs players like ProGrind. Now, my idea is just to have one called ProGrind, but it needs those large volume, commercially focused. We don't do residential. We're not. That's not our forte. You know, the big Kevs don't fit through doorways real well. It needs those big players with their own brand to develop those national projects, okay? I think suppliers putting it out a specification, and they're certainly in the residential market, then takes away from those artisans and what they can do. You know, it's up to those guys who are, I mean, residential guys are so much better than commercial in terms of what they can do. It's amazing.
Yeah. In what they do.
Right? They're well, but they're two different requirements as well. We can get away with a little bit of unfinished edges because gondolas are going up against the wall type stuff, right? Yeah. Their techniques and their patience, they're dealing with people who've got to live with it. They're going to walk in, their expectation in residential is so much different to commercial from that point of view too, right? So there's a little bit of difference in motivation, but they are the ones who have got to build their own brand. They've got to be, I'm amazing at this. I'm going to deliver on your expectations. Not, I got a builder or a Works Plus type company over here putting out specifications and a recipe that I know I can do better than the other person doing it. You know, you're not. Yeah. So I'm really glad we never went down that path.
And trust me, I would love to have one because, you know, it'd be great to go out and guarantee, if you like, secure all that work from for our customers, but it just undermines what they're building in their own brand and the value that they bring to the market themselves.
Yeah, but the problem is if you don't control the outcome, that work doesn't last too long. And we've seen that. Yeah. We've seen, where are these big national brands specifications now?
Yeah.
We stopped seeing them.
Yeah.
We stopped coming up against them because they got getting removed from specifications because the message ProGrind was selling was different. We all control the outcome. That's a big difference.
And I always say you can walk into a national tile store and the name that you're going to see on the tile is a manufacturer's name. It's not going to label everyone else's stuff that's in it.
Exactly. Yep. And but even if you go to a carpet court and they've got their own carpet, it's still a Godfrey's carpet or it's still a Victoria carpet. It's just got a different code on the back. The label's still there and you can match that code back to a batch that Victoria Carpet's made. They don't make their own, they might promote, but it's still got the same warranty. It's all that type of stuff. It's got to be, the quality controlled has to be controlled by the person doing the installation at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's easy to have bad installers, take shortcuts. It's the industry we're in.
Yeah.
It's easy to have bad installers quickly to destroy that product.
And you just brought up a different part. You're talking about installers versus manufacturers.
Yeah,
right?
because that's what we are.
And, concrete polishers are on-site manufacturers.
Correct. Yeah.
Whereas an installer takes
a product and lays it.
And that is...
And that was one of the things too we used to explain to our there was a lot of resistance, but in a lot of these big brands to have one contractor because they always thought they were going to get put over the barrel, and it takes a long time to build the trust that they're not. Like ProGrind, we absorbed a lot of cost without raising prices for a long time. Okay, so we had to build that trust because there was a lot of resistance initially. It was lucky they had some bad experiences that actually made that transition a little bit easier. But that's how we used to explain it to them because. I remember there was a particular Dan Murphy's down near Frankston that another contractor had done. And Dan's called us in and said, this is the floor. And they said, can you do a report? I said, no, we don't do reports on other contractors' work. And they're gone, but they've done hyperfloor. And we said, well, I reckon they missed a few things, okay, because you could see the scratching in the floor. It was very shiny under gondolas and just dull everywhere else. Wasn't enough densify. All these problems with it, okay? And that's why I actually explained to them because they said, well, why, if they've done this particular flooring method, why doesn't it look like yours? I said, well, we do it a little bit differently. We're part of the evolution of the products. We understand it a bit differently. So to build that trust, we had to explain to them we're an on-site manufacturer, as well. We are on-site manufacturing. So everyone's got a different interpretation of that. And if you haven't allowed enough money to pay your guys to do it, then shortcuts are going to get made. If you think you can cut a shortcut, we know, Josh, there are people out there that are doing, hyperfloor branded stuff using diamond tooling and chemicals from the cheapest places they could get it. That's not. And that was probably even happening when King Concepts was in control of it too, right? That's just the nature of the beast.
And now you're talking about a brand, someone else's brand, getting killed off, that they paid good money to have.
Correct.
In being the supplier when people are saying that this is what I'm installing when they're not.
Yes, and they're not because the person out there selling it isn't controlling the outcome. I remember when we started working with Beacon Lighting, the easiest sales call I'd done in my life. I'd been to a Beacon Lighting and the floor looked really bad. It had been coated. It was delaminating. I called up Beacon and asked to speak to the guy in charge of property development, who's named Brian Finlay. Actually built a really good relationship with him over the years. Very lovely guy, very retired. He's probably a lovely guy after as well. I'm sure he's still a lovely guy.
He's one of those grumpy retired
I remember
people.
I used to have these little sample tiles.
Yeah.
And I brought it down to him and he said, what? Is this it? I said, yeah, is it coated? I said, no, it's not. I said, try and scratch it. He couldn't scratch it. He goes, done. We've got six stores we're about to start. We want this in it. Didn't even ask what it was going to cost. And we had a relationship with Beacon Lighting there for many, many years, after that. When you take that, but that would have failed if that was the end of the process.
Yeah.
If I would have said, this is your outcome, and they would have put a specification in that every contractor we're making more money on tooling, fantastic. We're seeing the results we expect to see, but the customer's not seeing the results they expect to see because it's different to that tile, which I left with him as well, is there's a disconnect there and it's not going to last for very long. So that's why we were very protective in ProGrind. And I actually remember that call now because it was, we had a few of those discussions over the years in terms of, especially when we're getting Works Plus off the ground, how can we tie this back together? And I'm like, you can't, because you're going to handicap what ProGrind does and you're going to devalue the market in terms of what we've built if you start putting a specification out and expect ProGrind to work to that specification with all those similar problems. Hence, when we moved to a contractor model, that kind of solved a lot of that problem in the volume game.
Yeah.
Because we were getting not just the specification from ProGrind out there, but managing that outcome, ensuring that the tooling and the chemicals was all coming from Works because we knew that's what created the outcome.
Yeah.
It really helped solve that, I think, that little bit of, conflict from a manufacturer's point of view in terms of, how do we get our tooling out there as well and make sure it's being used because it is the best tooling on the planet. How do we make sure that outcome is being consistent? Well, you need to partner with a contractor to do it. And that could have been any contractor.
Yeah.
Just happened to, we owned one at the time.
Lucky you were. I mean, we nearly pulled that from you.
Yeah. It's okay. I had MPC2 lined up, trademarked, ready to go.
It's the it's the benefits of sharing a warehouse at the time for you guys.
For us.
We couldn't really cut off supply, could we?
No. Especially when we knew where it came from because we were unpacking it.
Can you think of any really? Are there any things in your time at ProGrind that just stick out as like really dumb things that happened or that we did in the time there, or really things that stick out when you actually get together with Mark and Chris and have a couple of drinks and say, boy, was that a bad thing to do?
I think Mark could remember a lot more than me because I'm not very good at remembering negative things so much.
I was going to say he's very good at remembering all of these.
Mark would be able to. I do remember we went. We sent Mark to do a Dan Murphy's in Oxley in Queensland once, and all he had was a photo of a sign. That was in the vicinity to the freeway, but he found the job site. In terms of dumb things. We probably took on some projects we shouldn't have. That probably cost us a little bit because we saw volume. And this is a really good classic example, the mine building. Okay.
Yeah.
Largest polished concrete job in the country at the time was like 11 or 13,000 square meters. Well, it was big, but man, was it inefficient because it was multi-level racetrack, carpet fit under pressure. We'd pitched to do a surface polish, which I was really happy with. And we did the sample on the ground floor. Everything else was suspended above that. Now, we got a lot of variations for fixing the concrete when you talk about having to take down 20 mil. But we learnt out of that, okay? And I remember one thing we always taught our guys at ProGrind is mistakes are learning opportunities, okay? So if you make a mistake, tell us, because it means there's a failure in the systems and processes supporting you as an operator, whether it's training or technical or whatnot, and we need to plug that gap so we don't keep on having that. Okay, so we learnt out of that. So I'd like to think any kind of negative that happened, we found a way to learn from it, not to do it again. Okay, because I was pretty strict on that. Now I remember a couple of years ago, I was playing poker in the Crown. I was sitting next to a guy and we got chatting. And he asked me what I did. He said, no, bold and polished concrete. He goes, one of my best mates was involved in that. I said, who's that? So Lee Reid. I said, Potter. Anyway, he goes, yeah. He goes, no, remember, he told me that he used to love working there. He goes, it was the best place to work from because he was just built up as a person, right? We gave the people the freedom to make a mistake. I remember when Tim Charlton first started with us and he burnt through a set of resins in like 50 square meters, right? Because it was the wrong resin anyway and stuff. But it was and he was so scared. It's like, dude, it's okay. We've learned not to use that resin in this type of concrete. So Mark and I probably got a little bit of a different way we see these kind of negatives. And there's probably heaps of them, but I'm just not really good at remembering them because I like remembering the wins. Yeah. Like the day we picked up coals, the day they were good days. The the friendships I've built with our customers, like the guys and Matt Healy from JBI5, for instance, I actually spoke to him about the shops we're now working with in Hunt the Night and the best way of dealing with permits and councils and growth and all that type of stuff. So for me, I've taken a lot more out of it at a positive level.
Yeah.
I would struggle to, I'm sure we've done some dumb shit, don't get me wrong, like real dumb. And Mark would probably bring it up and I'd probably wet myself laughing and I would have forgotten it. I'd like to remember those things, but I'm just not real good at remembering them.
Yeah.
But that's been my whole life. Like, I'm not good at holding on to.
I think also when if we look back at how much you've done in a fairly compressed time and space, there's probably not a lot of time for reflection when you're so focused on forging a new path.
Yeah.
It's very hard to continually looking back and remembering those things when you kind of devoted all of your brain power to this as well.
And the other problem was too, like being for a long time the only salesperson, my job was to keep the machine fed.
Yeah.
So I didn't get a lot of time to reflect or think about, oh crap. It was, oh crap, how do we not do that next time? And then we started changing contracts. We used to cross things out of contracts all the time, rewrite stuff into contracts. Contractors, you can do that. If you're not happy with the vanilla contract, negotiate points out. Because we learned there were things we'd done, and so we go back to the contracts like, we have to operate within the contract, and now we're being forced to do things we didn't really want to have to do. So we learned from all those types of things. So there was probably a pivotal point in terms of why we did that, and a particular contract. I just can't remember which one it was, but I do remember the times when contracts saved us.
Yeah,
there was one in Western Australia. Oh my gosh, were those guys dodgy. We did a Coles job, right? They'd issued us all these variations and then they were holding like a significant amount of money from us and saying, no, there weren't variations anymore. We didn't meet the timeline. And I just went back to the contract because I'd written all this stuff into the contract. I'd signaturized it. They had signaturized, not even realizing there was no actually timeline in there anymore because the start date of the contract was actually after we were actually starting on site. So I'd crossed that out. I wrote TBA. We protected ourselves. But we would have learnt that from a bad contractual experience. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I think that's also a really important thing too, is that as a contractor, this piece of paper here that you're being presented with from a builder, no matter what size they are, this is actually a point of negotiation until it's signed.
Yeah, and contractors have to get good at it because one thing we did in our quotes as well, which formed part of the contract, we'd a line in there that's saying no matter what you've written in your contract, this overrides the contract, right? And a lot of the builders would take that quote, put it in the contract without ever reading it, and would go back to it and go, it's here. And they go, oh, fantastic.
And that's the reason why when you receive a contract from these bigger builders these days, it says this contract overrides any ProGrind contracts.
But our one says our contract overrides any contract that says it overrides any contract.
My dad's bigger than your dad.
Exactly right. Our contract overrides your contract plus one. Infinity.
Times infinity.
Yeah, exactly. Times infinity. Yeah, take that. But contracts are vanilla. Everyone gets pretty much the same one. No one expects anyone to challenge it, but every contract administrator will look at it in case-by-case scenario and go, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. I can see how that doesn't apply. I can see, okay, excellent. In order for you to meet these, because when you're dealing with large volume, you need space because we're dealing at, I mean, when we're doing residential, it was like 170, 180 bucks a square meter, as opposed to 60, 70 bucks a square meter when you're dealing 1,000 square meters. It takes the same time to do a square meter if you do a square meter at a time.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a lot quicker if we've got access to 500 square meters to do first cut than it is to do 180 square meters in a house that's got all rooms and stuff. Okay. So it's about efficiencies. So we'd have to negotiate that into the contract and say, in order for us to meet this price point, we need this from you. And builders would actually look and go, yeah, no problem. Okay. The project managers would deliver it or the contract administrator will go, yeah, that makes sense. The site manager would hate it, right? We'd go back to the contract, as well. And we used to get threatened with liquidated damages and we're behind and blah, blah, blah. for things that weren't our problem. And I remember one specific project in Sydney, and they were trying to enforce something onto us that wasn't part of our contract. And the guy was just full on abusing to me. I'm like, settle down. What you need to do is go back to your contract. You've got to write me a notice of a delay. He's like, what? And I just started quoting him contract to him. He's like, what? We never heard from him again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, don't take the abuse from the guys on site, the contract. Go back to your contract. There's actually a lot of protection in there, and there are processes in place because they all like to threaten things. But without following the due process, they don't have a leg to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of fun, actually. And then actually that protects you for a couple of reasons. When they know you know the contract, they don't want to have to deal with you because it's going to be too hard. They like the people they can bully and,
So don't get caught up in the emotion. Understand what your obligations are from a contract, but also understand what their obligations are.
Correct.
And don't sign any contracts unless you're comfortable with them.
Yeah. And that was probably... We learned that because I reckon initially I was just signing a contract and sending it back, and we got stuck on something. Mark will know what we got stuck on. But yeah.
So as a contractor, which is a really interesting name because that's what I'm supposed to do by nature.
Yes.
What's in the contract.
Yes.
Right. As a contractor, I don't have to get legal advice. I don't have to go to a lawyer to say, can I cross this out? I'm not happy with it.
No.
I can just do that myself and then negotiate with the person who served me the contract. Are we all in agreement here? Yes, we are. Then we can sign it. We don't need any.
Yes.
Okay.
No. And look, and there are protections under construction law about one-sided contracts as well. And there's other little things. If you're involved, being involved in the commercial side of things, we learned pretty quickly that all our payment claims or invoices, you have to make them under the Security Payment Act. Because that gives you a lot of protections. It triggers things that are different to if you give an invoice without the Security Payment Act detailed on it, that invoice can just disappear. We are paid, challenged. You don't have a lot of claim. It doesn't trigger a process behind it. When you issue an invoice under the Security Payment Act, they've got 10 days to certify the invoice. If they don't certify it within that period, the invoice automatically stands and there's no recourse. They have to pay it. Okay? We call builders out on that all the time. Sloppy builders who will then get to the end of the month and go, oh, no, this wasn't done, that wasn't done. It's too bad. We've made the invoice claim under the Security Payment Act. You're outside of your thing. You have to pay it. You get back to them. They pay it. They don't want to. But otherwise, they're in breach. And that can then trigger a whole lot of things. There's a lot of protection in the actual construction industry for people getting paid because it's notorious for people not being paid.
Yeah.
But you've got to know it. And that's again where we offered that protection to our customers or to our contractors rather, because we took all that on.
Yeah.
A lot of those. So when you're going from that 2 to 3 man specialising residential, got the opportunity to work on this big project, this is the type of stuff you need to know because A, you'll look more professional. B, you won't get paid.
Mm-hmm.
It's too hard not to.
Yeah,
they'll readjust
absolutely.
things when they got to based on cash flow.
If you're a 3-man band and you take on a 2,000, 3,000 square metre project, that cash flow that comes from all of your existing customers isn't coming in and you're not doing any work for those customers at that time because you're all tied up. So you're either going to be losing work that's coming in. Yeah. You'll finally finish that job. It's, 60 or 90 days. Yeah. And that's from the time that it actually, from the time they actually commit to paying you.
You've still got to pay the people you employ.
You've still got to pay them. And then somehow you've got to try and have some customers to go see after that. Yeah. So it's a big balancing act. Yeah, and like you said before, I think you said stick to your knitting
stick to what you're good at. Do what you enjoy.
Exactly. So
drive your passion.
What's your brand? What's your product? Who's the target market? No pun intended. Who's the target market and stick with that. And if you are looking to scale, you've got to go and learn how that happens.
Correct. Yeah, because it's a painful transition. Yeah. It took us a long time to do it. And we did it the hard way. Like we've made it easier for people to learn it now because we made all the mistakes and took all that pain on. So we learned a lot in that. And that was really exciting, just being part of that whole emerging.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. I should have just introduced you initially as the man who's made more mistakes than you, if you're a contractor listening. I
just came for the free lunch.
Everybody does. So you did happen to mention before that a lot of relationships that you made while you're in the game, you still have today.
Yeah.
Now you're rolling out your own stores. You've got a big one opening pretty shortly.
Yeah, we do in Pakenham. And actually the Beacon Lighting shop fitter, NHI, who we developed that relationship, has actually done all the shop fitting for us, which is really cool. They're a great crew.
Yep.
Actually, they're nicer to work with than for. That whole pressure of developing stores. Look, we do. And it's actually the number of people. Look, we've got a lot of customers that are involved in the concrete industry, and the number of people that are rocked up and gone, oh, you're Josh's brother. Happens all the time. Like, oh, you're a Veen. Like, yeah, so it's nice. But yes, no,
would it be nice to have them as customers though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. So, no, I mean, we've got a small store in Pakenham at the moment. That's, translating into a big one. Now, the growth we've had there in 3 years to go from zero to one of the most recognised gun brands in the country, or shops, is been incredible. It's been amazing, but it's come with its own set of pains.
Yeah, I bet.
But they've been fun ones.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's very exciting days.
Yeah, but you can also find us at huntthenight.com.au. We do ship express post Australia-wide. Free shipping over $1,000 or 1300 486.
Okay, thanks, Ben. That was really great.
Awesome. No, it's been lovely to reflect on my time in the industry.
And thank you for sharing your knowledge and lessons with other contractors.
Well, my speaking tour starts this week in Albury and sold out. And the How to Become ProGrind is a nationwide tour. And the beauty about that is you don't actually pay to come for it. We just take a percentage of sales.
Right, okay. Everything up until about 30 seconds ago was good information. Certified, rubber stamped.
That's right.
Approved.
Thanks, Josh. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
This show is proudly supported by WorksPlus. WorksPlus brings total solutions to all concrete grinding and polishing contractors to make it totally work for their daily operations. We hope you've enjoyed this show. Make sure to tune in each week where we're going to dive deep into all things related to concrete grinding and polishing. We're here to help you so that you can boost your outcomes on the floor.